Now, if I had to guess, I am not the only Dragon Ball fan who just freezes up when somebody asks me what my favorite part of the story is. To be completely honest, the Buu Saga was never really my favorite. I'm usually torn between the Frieza and Cell sagas being the best personally. So, if you're familiar with the channel, you might be asking why I'd even want to break down the Buu Saga first out of all the other great storylines in the series. Well, first of all, because I've seen all your comments. Thank you so much for all the support on these Dragon Ball videos, it really does mean a whole lot. Thank you. The second reason is a little bit more personal. I actually started the manga at the Buu Saga as a kid. I found volume 24 at a library after I'd seen a little bit of the anime, read up until Fat Buu got absorbed, and I was furious that I couldn't find any more of the series after that. Funnily enough, after I was able to finish the arc out, I actually went straight to OG Dragon Ball and read this series in order from there. Because of that, the Buu Saga was my introduction to the Dragon Ball manga, and reading chapter 1 of the series with the story's ending in mind changed things for me in a big way. Even if this arc wasn't my natural favorite before the reread I did for this video, it was always the most interesting plot-wise to me, and there's a bunch to talk about here. With all that in mind, what's the word? Malachi here, I talk about manga. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball breakdowns like these, I got a sneaking suspicion there's something else on the channel you might like, so think about subscribing. You probably heard people rip apart the Buu Saga before, and while I am going to be getting into the weeds on a few things here and there, I think this is the absolute peak of Dragon Ball, and it's really not close. Now, this is a long arc with a lot of twists and turns, so we're going to be focusing on the points in the story where things fundamentally change, kind of like a pivot point if you want to call it that. There are going to be some timestamps in the description if you want to skip around to a specific part of the video, but you can expect discussion centered around Buu's initial reveal, his first fight with Goku, his fight with Goten and Trunks, his fight with Gohan, and then his second fight with Goku at the end of the arc. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you'd like some similar analysis on any other arcs in the series. In chapter 267, we get introduced to the main antagonist of this storyline. If you watched the video I put out the other week, you'll know that I think Toriyama faithfully stuck to a certain formula when it came to his villains. Without a doubt, that pattern ends right here. Buu is a subversion wrapped up in another subversion, and he stands apart from every other antagonist in the series. If you read this introduction by itself, it'll 100% read like a gag chapter because that's kind of what it is. Buu arrives and we get this dramatic spread of everybody's shocked faces. Kyle Shin is actively trembling in fear, but he's really the only person here who's scared. Babidi doesn't even know what Buu looks like, which we'll get into later. Dabura doesn't know what to think, and Gohan feels like he can beat him up if he uses all of his power. In case we thought Gohan was just being overconfident, Vegeta basically says the same thing. It seems like the Saiyans have just gotten too strong and Buu probably won't be a problem. So, not to be cliche or anything, but how did we get here? Let's start with Gohan, the first member of the main cast to see Buu and the only familiar character who was present when he came out of the seal. Toriyama placed him here because he's the most important person in the story at the moment. Everything that's happened up to this point pretty much revolves around Gohan, which makes sense. He was established as the new hero of the Earth after Cell, and he clearly can't stop helping people. If anything, the first few chapters of Buu feel like the beginning of the Saiyan saga. Gohan can fly on his own, but he chooses to ride Kintuan just like Goku in early Z. Toriyama even introduces a character for Gohan to bounce off of in Videl, who's basically a combination of Bulma and Chi-Chi. She's a fighter with a famously strong dad like Chi-Chi, but she's also an intelligent and slightly manipulative city dweller with a good amount of status in her hometown just like Bulma. As Gohan navigates school, Chi-Chi and Bulma get a good amount of panel time offering help and advice, all while Videl propels the story forward, roping Gohan into participating in the tournament with a promise, kinda like how Chi-Chi got Goku to marry her back in the day. If you look at the scene where Videl and Chi-Chi meet, you can even see them standing in the exact same pose as they argue over Gohan. That aside though, this early part of the story sets up two things for Gohan, his two superhero identities. With the Great Saiyan Man, Toriyama can get off some gag panels, and the Golden Warrior ties in the secret of Gohan's role in Cell's death into things. When Gohan's cover is blown, he can never go back to his old life, so when it happens during the tournament, we know things are about to kick off. Before we move on though, make sure to note that Gohan gets angry during Videl's match and can't do anything because of the tournament rules. He actually would have been matched up against Popovich in the second round if things didn't escalate the way they did. Once the group makes it to Babidi's ship, Toriyama starts paring down the cast to its bare essentials. Videl learns the truth about Cell and her dad and gets left behind. Piccolo and Krillin get turned into stone. Spopovich, Yamcha, and Kibito all get killed off. Now we're left with the central three, Gohan, Goku, and Vegeta, plus Kaioshin. If you watch my Gohan video, you'll know how important this trio is to the story, so we're clearly getting into more serious territory. At this point, Toriyama starts feeding us some pivotal information about Gohan. It had already been implied by Vegeta in chapters 229 and 250, but Gohan slacked off during the peacetime. Now, to be fair to him, he's been fighting life and death battles since he was a toddler, and he deserves some rest, but looking at things pragmatically, the protector of Earth needs to be prepared to fight. Even Goku can't argue with Vegeta's observations as Gohan struggles with Dabura, who's around the same level as Cell. Things may have shifted in Gohan's favor as the fight went on, but we'll never know because Babidi turns Vegeta soon after and things start to spiral. Before Goku and Vegeta start their fight, Goku tells Gohan to get angry and that he won't lose to anyone when he's enraged. Now, personally, I think Gohan got angry, lost to Cell, got saved by Goku, and then got a second chance, but that aside, let's take a look at how things pan out for him in the following chapters. In 265, Gohan admits that he's angry, but he just can't be the way he was back then in the Cell arc. In other words, even though both Goku and Vegeta know that Gohan can surpass them when he's angry, he just can't right now, and then Buu comes out. Now, I don't think this is Gohan's fault, and we'll get into whose fault it really was later, spoiler alert, Goku and Vegeta, but keep all of this in mind for later on. We all know Gohan has potential in terms of strength, but does he really have the potential in the story as the protector of the Earth from what we've seen so far? Regardless of all of that, Toriyama is still clearly preparing him for a central role in the story. Gohan gets blown away by Buu and gets removed from the story to train, just like Goku during the Piccolo, Daimyo, Saiyan, and Cell sagas. Now, that was a lot on Gohan, but luckily everyone else involved is less important at the moment. Goku and Vegeta, for example, are supporting characters. Toriyama calls back to the One Day on Earth rule from OG Dragon Ball to place Goku in the tournament, and he gets matched up with Vegeta in round 1. This kind of gets overshadowed by the excitement of everything else going on, but placing this match so early in the tournament is really a dead giveaway that things aren't going to go as planned. Piccolo straight up concedes his match against Kaioshin, Gohan gets snuck and drained during his fight, and by the time Goku and Vegeta's match is about to start, everyone's leaving to check out Babidi and Buu. We do, however, get some hints that this fight means a lot more to Vegeta than it does to Goku, at least early on, which makes sense. He's over-invested in Trunks being stronger than Goten, and he wants him to surpass Gohan one day. Even if Vegeta himself is stronger than Gohan at the moment, it seems like he still isn't as strong as Gohan was against Cell, so even if he could beat Gohan up, it really wouldn't matter to him. Of course, Goku surpassing that level during the time skip pushes Vegeta over the edge and he gives himself to Babidi. The fight that these two have is absolutely pivotal to the plot moving forward, but it's not really emphasized in terms of panel time. Why is that? Well, let me explain. It actually ties into Goku not using Super Saiyan 3 and lying about his full strength. There's a consistent theme of the Saiyans surpassing expectations in this early part of the arc. Gohan, the weakest of the three, absolutely shocking Kaioshin during the tournament sets the tone. Goku and Vegeta no diffing their opponents and Babidi's ship continues the trend, and even Buu not seeming that strong early on plays into this idea. Goku even says it himself. He and Vegeta were already planning to fight once they got to the ship. With all that in mind, when we see the fight start, there's this panel of them going back and forth, and then they smile at each other. It's clear as day that even though Goku gave into Vegeta to save lives at the tournament, and Vegeta gave into Babidi because he was weaker than Goku at the moment, they both fundamentally enjoy fighting, and they thought they could get away with waking Buu up because things didn't seem that dangerous in the moment. Ironically enough, Vegeta says that Goku's vulnerable when he's off guard, but Vegeta ends up having to die because both of them underestimated the situation, so he should really be included in that statement as well. With all that in mind, we don't really need to see the fight, even though I've heard it's pretty good in the anime, because we learned everything we need to know about why they're fighting in a couple of pages, and we're not supposed to enjoy the fight. It was a mistake. Now that we've gotten past all this early arc stuff, I personally really love this section of the story. When you look at Buu's introduction with all that context, it's pretty clear what this arc is going to be fundamentally. The stakes are going to be the highest they've ever been, and Toriyama is going to be getting off as many jokes as humanly possible. If that works for you, it works, and if it doesn't, you're probably not going to like this arc. Moving on, our next point of focus is in chapter 279 as Goku fights Buu. Now, this meeting was delayed as Goku was knocked out while Gohan and Vegeta fought Buu, so he's actually the last one out of the main three to meet him, funnily enough. I think a lot of the community's problems with the story start right here, so let's talk about Super Saiyan 3 for a second. After Goku wakes up, he tells Piccolo and Krillin that he's too weak to beat Buu. Of course, we just saw him equal out with Vegeta a few chapters ago, so this makes sense at the moment at least. After this, we get another statement from Goku implying that he's weak in 278, so when he reveals this new form a chapter later, it's pretty confusing. Now, I want to really focus in on another panel that we get during this fight, where Goku and Buu go back and forth and we get this very similar shot of Goku grinning. I'm sure you already know what I'm about to say. Clearly Goku is enjoying this fight too. After he teleports away, we're left wondering whether Goku could have won, so Toriyama gives him some dialogue where he explains why he didn't just fight Buu then and there. According to him, he didn't really know if he would have been able to win, as Super Saiyan 3 really only works in the afterlife where time doesn't matter. If we contextualize this with Goku admitting to Buu that he's still getting used to this form, it's clear that Goku truly didn't know exactly what was going to happen with his remaining time, so that lines up with what he said in this moment. The most important part of this statement comes right after though. Apparently Goku wanted to give the kids a try because he doesn't really even exist on Earth anymore. Clearly Goku's aware that someone needs to protect the planet and he can't do it anymore. All that being said, it's important that we note that Goku is still getting used to Super Saiyan 3, didn't use it against Vegeta for selfish fighting reasons, and proceeds to huff and puff and sweat until he goes back to the afterlife after he uses it against Buu. So let's talk about this next generation that Goku's willing to entrust the planet to. Goten and Trunks get potential statements from their introductions. They're both shown kind of pressing Gohan and Vegeta during the training section of the early arc, although Goten can't fly yet and Trunks ends up getting knocked down after chipping Vegeta. In the tournament, they get an extended fight in the kids section, then a prominent role in the final battle royale against 18 in the adult section. Now, personally, I think Toriyama tends to go pretty heavy on the gags with these two, but I can't really blame him. Trunks and Goten have a lot of potential to be funny here. Pretty much every time they're on panel, something comedic is happening. After the tournament, they follow behind the others to check out Buu, and it's through their perspective that the central adventure aspect of Dragon Ball continues to be prominent in the story. Of course, they arrive in the middle of a battle, save Vegeta from Buu, and are quickly thrust into the middle of the conflict. It's here that Toriyama kills off Dabura, releasing Piccolo and Krillin from their stone form so that they can guide the kids, specifically Piccolo. By the time Goku wakes up, they're getting an accelerated version of the training that Gohan got over the course of 3 arcs, learning from Goku and Piccolo at the same time. Now, personally, even though these two get hyped up for their potential, I knew they weren't going to be beating Buu when they came up short against him twice in the same chapter. And if you're not a fan of the gags in this part of the story, I'm sure they're bogging down the pacing for you. With that in mind, it makes sense to move on to these two's fight against Buu next. In short, Gotenks is a gag character, so all of his scenes and fights are going to be gags. His fight against Buu with Piccolo in the background providing commentary is probably one of the funniest parts of this arc, in fact. While this is all going on, there are 2 other subplots in motion concerning Hercule and Gohan. On Hercule's end, he's just coming out of a joke confrontation / friendship with Fat Buu, which is played for laughs, but actually pushes the plot forward by prompting Buu to transform for the first time. With the emergence of Super Buu, things turn up a notch. While there aren't any definitive statements on him being stronger by a huge amount than Fat Buu, his body has changed into one honed for battle, and his soul is now full of rage as stated by Piccolo. It's at this point that things start to really accelerate, and I'd like to take some time to address the stakes during this part of the story. Personally, my suspension of disbelief was reaching near its ceiling while reading this saga. Not only are jokes flying left and right with the most fourth wall breaks since OG Dragon Ball, even some of the characters themselves are starting to get a little thin around the edges. For example, Bulma's parents don't care if they die, they just want to stay home with their pets and get revived by the Dragon Balls if Buu blows up their city. The main characters in the Sanctuary are forced to weigh lives against time, as Buu's undoubtedly going to destroy more and more of the Earth as the kids train. All of this is excused through the Dragon Balls, which should tell you something about how the story has progressed since the beginning of the series. On a basic level though, all of this is fine until you think about Goku deciding not to use Super Saiyan 3 against Vegeta or Buu the first time. Suddenly, with that context, these decisions take on more and more weight, and if you're reading this stuff critically, you have to take some time to think about it. Obviously, I love thinking about Dragon Ball personally, so it was fun for me, but I can see you personally not enjoying this direction if you have a different opinion. Things get more serious from here. The Earth's population gets wiped out by Super Buu, the sanctuary gets destroyed, and all of the supporting cast gets wiped out except for Dende and Hercule. While all of this serious stuff is happening, the gags get turned up a notch, almost like they have to adjust to what's happening in the story. Even Gohan's training that's happening in the background is a gag. While Gotenks is having his fight with Buu, Elder Kaioshin is doing a ridiculous ritual and bargaining for a chance with Bulma. It's at this point that things really start to feel like they need to be resolved. Objectively, things can't really get much worse for everybody. The Earth is completely empty, everyone we know is gone, and every main character that we pinned our hopes on is pretty much done training. Gohan powers up and heads to the battlefield at this point, so let's focus in on his fight with Buu. This is where what I was saying earlier about Gohan's potential comes in. Now, before I say this, keep in mind that I am a huge Gohan fan, and I spent years criticizing his treatment in this arc. This character has been built up to close things out. Kaioshin says he has the potential to surpass Buu. He's been gone the whole arc. Everyone thought he was dead. His love interest is even insisting that he can't be gone because she has a feeling. If Gohan took out Buu here, it would make perfect sense. Goku and Vegeta, who caused this problem, are gone. Goten and Trunks may have failed, but they're little kids with room to grow. Gohan can mentor them with Piccolo's help, and on top of that, Dende is still alive so they can fix everything with the Dragon Balls. So if it made sense, why didn't it happen? Well, in my opinion, just because something logically makes sense for a story doesn't mean it would work. Let me explain. If Gohan takes out Buu and saves the world, what changes for our important characters? Being more specific, how would an ending like this make readers feel? A world with Gohan as his protector with Goten and Trunks leaning on him just kind of sounds like how things were before, minus Vegeta. On top of that, we already know Gohan does not want to train. Does he even want to protect the Earth at this point? Personally, I don't think he ever had any potential in this arc in the ways that were truly important. Yes, he was able to get stronger, but the main reason he didn't win was because he just wasn't the right kind of character to win. Coming out of a time skip with him as the Earth's protector and seeing how he kind of fell short pretty much sealed it for me. So now that we've shown that Gohan wasn't the right person for the job, what's next? Well, more gags, of course. At this point in the story, things are at their most hectic with Goku and Vegeta returning to Earth, Buu absorbing pretty much everybody, and a new form of fusion being introduced through the Potara. I'm not going to talk about Vegeta much other than mention that I think his fight was a gag fight in the manga too, and that he's kind of a gag character here as well. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice that Toriyama uses a lot of gag characters to push the plot forward, whether we're talking about Buu, Hercule, Gotenks, or now Vegeta. So after Goku and Vegeta unfuse and save everyone that was inside of Buu, he transforms again and destroys the Earth off rip. With the introduction of these two as a pair, we're witnessing the dynamic that will go on to fundamentally characterize Dragon Ball Super, and it makes sense why that's the case. Goku and Vegeta are just entertaining to watch together. With the Earth in smithereens, things escalate to their highest point yet, and we get the resolution to one of the most underrated through lines in this arc, the theme of the strongest. Now, this idea hails back to OG Dragon Ball with Roshi's advice on there always being someone stronger and the strongest under the heavens tournament. Early on in the Buu Saga, we get some speculation from Goten and Trunks, comparing their dads of course. Goten mentions that Gohan told him that Goku was the strongest in the universe, which is interesting. In the same chapter, as stupid as the punch machine is, Goku gets the lowest number out of the group, while Vegeta breaks the machine in impatience. Pretty interesting contrast, right? While Kaioshin is explaining who Dabura is to the group, he addresses Goku as the strongest in the world, depending on how you want to address that statement. Then we get a panel of Vegeta with these ellipses. Pretty interesting again, right? All of this is pretty consistent with how things are before the fighting starts. Gohan is weaker than he was against Cell, Goku's stronger than that, and Vegeta needed a boost from Babidi to be equal to Goku. So clearly Goku's the strongest. As the plot starts to happen, things start to shift of course. First, the gap between Goku and the others widens due to Super Saiyan 3, but then things get more ambiguous with the introduction of Gotenks and Gohan's power-up. All that aside, the early section of this fight served to establish Goku as the strongest in the universe, all while Vegeta gives his famous speech acknowledging this. Now, in the confusion of this fight, there is another controversial Goku statement here that needs attention, as he seemingly admits that he could have beaten Buu in their first fight. I see the ramifications of this statement, as it would make his decision to not beat Buu very, very questionable, but I just personally think he's wrong. His first thoughts on Super Saiyan 3 after that first fight are that it only works in the afterlife where time doesn't really matter, which makes sense. Later on in the final fight, we see him drop out of the form because of his living body not being able to handle it. So it seems like to me that Super Saiyan 3 is just bad for fighting. Gotenks loses to fatigue or his timer running out against Buu. It happens to Goku here, and there's really no reason to believe that it wouldn't have happened against Buu in Goku's first fight with him. So with all that out of the way, from this point on, it's pretty much smooth sailing until the ending. That part of the story is pretty unanimously loved, and of course I agree. Goku asking for Buu to be reincarnated and then meeting Oob during the tournament after the time skip is perfectly in line with the story. Goku of course is the right person to close things out because he always has a motivation to get stronger that'll keep him able to protect the Earth. He's always on an adventure. So with all that in mind, this arc still really isn't my favorite in Z, but I can say that it's the most genuinely Toriyama out of all the storylines so far, which you can see in how he straddles the line between high stakes and humor the entire time. With that in mind, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to let me know in the comments if you want any similar arc analysis videos like this. Other than that, have a good day.